Hello, and thanks for coming along to And We Have an Office Dog, the digital agency podcast where we talk to agency owner-directors and learn more about what makes them tick. From the things that make them similar to the things they'd rather have known sooner, where they've had success and where they've learned some hard lessons. All will be revealed with your host, Chris Simmance, the agency coach, and he'll be talking to a different awesome agency person in each episode, asking them 4 questions and seeing where the conversation takes us over the next 25 minutes. Okay, so let us begin. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, voiceover guy. Okay, so let's begin. And in this episode, we've got Shane Hodge from thecamel.co. Interesting name, Shane. Go ahead, tell me how to, first of all, before you give us a pitch to tell us what you do and what you've done, how did you come up with thecamel.co as the name?
Oh, mate, what happened was we were originally called Camel and Straw Media. Because the story behind it was that I had a bad day and it was one of those things where the straw that broke the camel's back. And a mate of mine said on a phone call, trying to cheer me up, that's a great name for a business. So I went and registered Camel and Straw Media, but it was a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a long URL.
Oh, mate, it was too long.
Yeah.
And we were searching for years to see if we get something shorter. And then one day we got a notification from GoDaddy, the camel.co is available.
Brilliant.
And I just grabbed it.
Yeah. Okay.
And we've been the camel.co ever since.
So the camel.co, Shane, what is it that you do? Give us a plug about the agency for a few minutes. What is it you do best?
The camel.co is a digital fulfillment partner for a company called Duda, which is a CMS.
My first ever M. website was with Duda a good while ago.
Awesome. Started back in 2013.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
And very quickly became what's called a global fulfillment partner. And started off with 2 people. There was just myself and my wife. And she did websites and I sold them. Brilliant. And since then we've grown a bit. Now we're what's called a global fulfillment partner. And so we build websites for agencies all over the world. Mm-hmm. And we have our own development team, our own digital marketing team, and we've got something like 370 clients that we work on consistently, 5 major clients, and got over 200 people with operations in Philippines, India, and Australia.
Bloody hell! So you're a busy man.
Oh, mate. Yeah, I'm doing all right for an older fella.
Oh, you're only 23, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually 62, but what I do is I divide it by 2 every birthday.
There you go.
So I'm 31, mate.
There we go. Well, congratulations. You're looking brilliant for 31.
Oh, thank you very much.
So I'll jump on to the first question then, because I think that I think it almost alluded to in your little plug there. So what do you think has been one of your biggest successes over was it 8 years you've been running the agency?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What's one of the biggest successes, do you feel?
Right. Are you talking financial success, account success, or
you're the judge of your own success there, mate. So you tell me what you feel like is the biggest thing that if you were to walk out the door now, switch the lights off, the biggest sort of success you would always think
now
of.
That's a great question. What gives me the buzz?
There
you go. Doing a deal, I still love doing a deal every day. I'm a natural salesman and I love closing deals. I've been like that since I was a little child. Right? But if you ask me what's the biggest buzz, it's the little guy beating the big guy.
Love it, okay.
All right? Because we started off, as I said, there was only myself and my wife, and then we got to 10 people. And all of a sudden, because we became a fulfillment partner, we were up against massive fulfillment partners, like people with 1,500 employees turning over $150 million, and we had to compete against them. Mm. And I can remember the first major account I won, I sat back and seriously, it was like I won the lottery in the feeling.
Yep.
because it was
Yep.
the little guy in the Philippines back then, and we were dealing with second-hand computers and a little office with plastic chairs,
Yeah.
and we knocked off people that all had Macs on their desk and all that, and there was nothing better than that feeling.
Yeah.
The other part of that success, we've done it pretty old school.
Okay.
Right? And what I mean by old school is I work on the principle if the relationship is right, everything falls into place. So I really focused on building great relationships with new accounts and older accounts. So they become a little bit more forgiving, but it also gives you that opportunity to continually add value while you're talking about UFC or the football.
Right.
Right? I love that.
It's authenticity. I think there's some
Yeah, I
authenticity
really
there,
love
yeah.
it. I mean, on a Sunday, like last Sunday in UFC, there was a big heavyweight fight.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there chatting with the CEO of our largest account. Well, he's sitting at home in Australia having a beer. I'm in the Philippines having a vodka, and we're talking about the fight.
Yeah.
We're mates, right?
Yeah.
Every year, apart from COVID, we go overseas and we do a road trip, and we go and sit down at a pub, have a can of lunch or have a can of tea with every one of our major accounts. We go state by state by state by state, because that's old school business.
Yeah.
That's the way we love to do it.
So, I think I get where you're coming from in terms of the win. The first part of your answer there. It is a big thing. I love the same feeling. I think that anyone who starts businesses for themselves, whether they're a natural salesperson or not, they still love that feeling of the ink is wet on the contract. That immediate dopamine hit of, oh my God, we just nailed it. It might only be a 300 quid a month sign up or a 3 million quid a month sign up. It's the same feeling, I think.
Same feeling.
Exactly, and I think if you extrapolate that over time and keeping your authenticity, then that feeling remains. And I can recognise that. I think quite a lot of the people who listen will probably recognise that as well.
Love a win, mate.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, big or small. You're right. It doesn't matter if it's $20 million order or a $200 one. Nothing beats it. It's better than sex, I'll tell you. I love it.
I'm not going to go into that one. So that's not a question for this podcast. We may have very young agency owners listening. So I guess if you were to go back to was it 8 years or so ago and talk to the younger, more sprightly version of yourself, what kind of advice would you give yourself back then?
Good question, and I thought about that a lot today. And I think there was two parts of this. In that 8 years, there was the first 3 and then the next 5. All right?
Okay.
So if I had to go back, I'd go back to that first 3. And I'd tell myself, always aim high.
Okay.
Right? Reason being is that the wind is going to catch the goal and bring it down a bit. All right? So there's nothing wrong with chasing larger accounts. There's nothing wrong with chasing bigger orders. There's nothing wrong in setting higher goals for yourself, revenue-wise, everything else-wise, but set them high, because even if you go a little bit lower or half lower or 75% lower, you're a damn sight better off than what you were before. The first 3 years, I really struggled with that. I had a bit of a beggar mentality.
Okay.
I would grab any deal.
Oh, I see.
Because you're always in this survival mode.
Yeah.
But I stopped that after 3 years. And I said, no, stuff this. If I'm going to go after it, it's going to be worth it. And I'm going to feed the family for a week, not just a day.
Yeah.
So everything I did, I started to aim higher. And that would be something I'd tell myself from the start.
Yeah. It's a big thing with agency owners, I think, because as I've said it, I feel like a broken record when I say this a lot. That you start a business like this because you or your partner that you start with are great at what they do, and you're great at your respective skills. But at the same time, you look at the bank balance and you know what that means, and you will take quite a lot of agency owners never get out of that position that you say after 3 years that you mentally moved away from. They take anything that comes along, and it often causes problems. So you have a digital marketing agency that say only does SEO, and then somehow randomly start selling social media advertising, or they'll do this massive e-commerce website which ends up being screwed up at the expense of the client and reputation and things like that, because they see the number in the pitch, and they think, well, I'm going to go for this, and they don't know what they're letting themselves in for, other than the immediate win. So I think that's great advice to give younger Shane. What about after on that second half then, on the year 5 plus, given that you say it's kind of split in two?
Well, the second half of it, I learned to say no. Mm-hmm. Right?
Big
because
lesson.
You nailed it. There is some deals that will kill you. Right? They'll cripple you, but you do it because you think, oh shit, we need the money. We've got OPEX this month. We've got all this, and I learnt that you better just say no because of the drama. Yeah. But I also learnt the golden key, recurring revenue.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
That I made it a goal. I was sick to death of. Got to the end of the month, made whatever we needed to make. Let's say it was 40 grand or something, and then the next morning you'd wake up and go, well, shit, here we go again. And I wanted to stop doing that.
Yeah.
So I made myself a goal. I said, as quick as I can possibly do it, I'm going to have it that when I open the door on the first of the month, whatever the OPEX is, comes in.
Yep.
And that's when I started to make big leaps forward. But I also said no to things rather than being a bit of a beggar in my mentality. So that was the major difference in that. Once we got over that first 3, learn to say no, getting into recurring revenue, that's when things changed so much.
Yeah, I guess so you work with Duda, as you mentioned. It's a fantastic platform. It's certainly made huge leaps in the last few years, especially.
Correct.
But there's times when even 5 year plus Shane will say no to a client that doesn't necessarily fit that platform, because not every client fits every single box, right? But beginning first 3 years, you might have said yes to that, and I think the lessons that you learned along the way prevented you from causing undue stress and probably reputational damage, I guess.
Oh yeah, well, we weren't good at building massive, huge websites back then, but I took on a couple because they were good accounts, and it nearly killed us. Yeah. Because the kids, which I call my team, the kids weren't really geared up to do fully custom websites. The whole place wasn't. And we failed, absolutely bloody miserably. And it was one where you sit back and go, and I'm not that sort of person where I get upset for a week.
Yep.
I get upset till I wake up the next day.
Yep.
Right? And I look at it and I think, well, what mistakes did I make? Have a bit of a round table with everyone else, and then next day I'll make sure I don't do it again. But I made a few of them.
Yeah.
Because I didn't say no. I worried too much about being a bit of a beggar. And it is hard, Chris, because when you're new and you need money, it is hard to say no.
Yeah, I mean, if you say no, you're literally taking money off the table.
Yes.
And that money equals other people's salaries, or in some instances, you're paying to support other people's lives.
Yes.
And that bit of cash flow that you say no to could be instrumental in 6, 12, 18 months in the future. Yeah. An intangible knock-on impact of saying yes to things you shouldn't do is the undue stress that you put on your team. That they didn't sign up to work for you to have to pull their hair out in stress and agony just because they're trying to do something which if they don't do it they'll lose their job and so on. So there's that. You'll have staff churn as well as client churn as soon as you start doing these sorts of things, and it's a knock-on impact that you don't see coming. I often refer to it as the keep saying yes mode is kind of like everyone else can see a car crash coming, but it's we can see it in super slow motion, and you're having a lovely time driving your car and without any care in the world. So yeah, I think you're right there. Saying no is really, really important. So other than that though, do you think there's anything that you specifically kind of regret or wish that you'd done sooner? Or is there anything that you've kind of learned that has really set you up for success other than what we've just talked about?
I fell into the trap, which a lot of people do, of thinking I have to have some champions, right? So getting people in, you think, well, I've got to get a great designer.
Yep.
And you'll pay them more money and thinking that will get you to greatness. Or you have to get a really good account manager or a really good relationship manager. And that caused me heaps of drama where I had people I was paying a lot of money for who had bad habits that they'd learned from somewhere else. They didn't have the camel culture because there's a particular culture in the camel. And that again was that first 3 years. And then what I did, I thought, no, I'm going to train and teach and develop people ourselves. We're going to create our own team of champions. I'm not going to worry about CVs. I'm not going to worry about, where school they went to. I'm going to worry about what's this guy's talent or this gal's talent.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to nurture and I'm going to grow a team of champions. That was again the greatest turnaround.
Yeah.
When I no longer took notice of CVs, I didn't think, I need the best, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm not driving a Ferrari, I'm not going to win at Le Mans, right? Well, let's see what we can do with a Mini Minor and get us around there pretty quick as well.
Yeah, right? No, exactly. I think so. There's kind of, when you look at a member of staff, you have to kind of sort of break it down into, do they get the job? Do they understand what they need to do? Do they want to do the job? And are they capable of doing the job? And if you've got people that you're looking to hire or are looking in your team and you think, well, they get the job, they know what they're supposed to do. They want the job, whether it's for just for income or because they want to be there, but they're not quite capable yet. Is that capability something they can learn? And if it is, then quite right, you bring them through the Camel.co Academy and make them into the champions, because they'll stay working with you forever. They'll happily enjoy the fruits of success because they're a big part of that. And if they ever do move on, you can be proud of where they've moved to, right?
Well, we've got people that were with us that started off as just junior people, and they've left us because people do leave. Yeah. And they've gone on. Some of the developers that we taught them to be developers are now working for multinational corporations. Yeah. With senior roles, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah. Quite right.
I'm like a little father. I go, that's my son.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing. And if I look at all the department heads of the Camel, every one of them started in this company in a role that's got nothing to do with what they do now and had just graduated from school. Our number one designer had no schooling in design. He didn't even know how to use Photoshop. He just had a very creative mind.
Well, I've had a look at some of the websites that you guys have put together from your site, and I can say that they do look good, so that person's learned well.
He's good. And, even basically the number one developer, this is the only job he's ever had. He left school and come straight here. He still had pimples.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Crikey.
And our average team, if you work it out, we've been going 8 years. And on average, it's 5 years people have been here.
That's great. Oh, it's a good sign, not just from a salary perspective, but from a cultural perspective, it's really important. Yeah. And if you can, I don't know what it's like on average in your area of the world, but in the UK especially, you're looking at sort of like the junior to mid-level role is maximum of 18 months to 2 years of a churn rate. And that's, I mean, there's a lot of agency competition in the UK, but at the same time, I think that there's this there's a culture of elevation by migration.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, I literally just made it up there. So patent pending,
Well done.
terms and conditions apply, and all those sorts of things. I think in many cases the culture is equally, if not more important than the salary. And if you can get a perfect mix of the both, and you're also helping develop people, that's why you can keep them for so long.
I think it's a Filipino thing too, because the Filipinos, if you've got one block of chocolate, you will cut that up to feed whoever's there. So if there's 5 people and you've got one piece of chocolate, you'll cut it into 5. It's this real caring, sharing culture.
Yeah.
And that's the culture of the Camel. It's like a family.
Yeah.
Right? It's very hard to give an individual award in the Camel because each team member will say, but without him, and her,
Yeah, that's lovely.
I couldn't have done it.
That's lovely.
All right? So you got to get that in them.
Yeah.
And they find it very difficult when they go to another company if it's not matching that culture. Now, we've had some kids leave and get senior roles in McDonald's, and 1 year they want to come back.
Yeah.
Because they miss the culture.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's that migration. What do you call it? Migration by
Elevation by migration.
elevation by migration. If you've got the right culture, it doesn't work. Even when you try to bring them into the team,
Yeah.
it's not going to work. You can look at their resume and go, well, there's elevation, migration.
Yeah.
They're not going to fit. And it's key for an agency to develop your culture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that starts right at the very beginning from the agency owner's point of view in terms of like, what do I want out of this business from
Yes.
a personal perspective, not the professional, and then you break that into how does my professional life create this personal life.
Yeah.
And then that works. You work from there and say, how do I do this? Well, I need this many people doing this many things. How do I make these people happy to follow this vision, which helps me get to my thing? And
Yep.
and you create a culture that meets that purpose. And I think that's one thing that lots of agency owners miss out on. And it's not because of lack of trying. They've probably read a book or they've had someone giving them advice. But the one of the key aspects of why that doesn't necessarily work is that they're kind of doing it as a box checking exercise, trying to create a culture. This is where the name of the podcast came from. I mean, every agency has an office dog almost, and that's somehow kind of part of the culture. We have a personality because we have an office dog. Okay, I have a dog in my office right now, but that doesn't mean that's part of the culture of the business. But if you try and create a culture by box checking, you're basically setting yourself up for some future pain. I think.
Yeah, it's the same as not being able to say no.
Yeah, it's probably more painful in the long term because
It's the human factor, mate. And I like what you've taught me some today. I like that elevation by migration is now one of my new things.
There we go.
But it's so true. And if we look at those new agencies that are out there, it's so key that get that culture, get that thing going, train your own people, right? And you will create a team, and that will make you money.
Yeah. I think
Right.
I think so. The actual the fourth question for me was actually going to be what advice would you give, and would do the culture piece be that advice, or is there something else that you think would be quite powerful as I'm looking to start my agency this time next year. What would you give them if you were to sit down with
You ever watch the have you got kids?
I have dogs. Dogs are my children.
You have a dog, all right? Well, maybe your dog has watched that movie Frozen.
Yes.
All right? And there's a famous song in that, Let It Go, Let It Go.
Yep.
The number one skill you got to learn.
I have a
let
niece,
it go.
so I know that. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I tell people that all the time, let it go. In other words, empower people. Right? Even if you only got one person, empower that person.
Yeah.
Right? Stop being Eddie the expert and Cyclone at every single thing you do. Don't covet. right? Don't give people chances. Give them chances. Let people take risks, right? Empower them because they grow. And when they grow, you'll make more money, right? So my number one thing, let it go. Number two, get a culture within that company. So, you know, everyone knows, and they might hate McDonald's, but McDonald's is McDonald's.
Well,
right?
they've done, good or bad, they've done a good job in terms of growth, haven't they?
And I look at brands, like I love Ducati, I love Harley Davidson, I love Porsche, right? Why do I love them? There's a culture, there's a vibe, there's a soul about those things, right? And if you look at any time they fail, it's because they go against the soul.
Yep.
They go against the culture, right? But when you build your agency, everyone knows in the Duda world, the camel.co, everybody, right? And I can say that humbly, but it's the truth. And they know a camel site, they know a camel person, they know a camel template, they know a camel widget, they know the way we write our blogs, they know it. We have a camel culture, and we maintain it, and we grow it, and we strengthen it, and we do not compromise it. And that was the same with it was only my wife and myself. We had a culture.
So you've stuck to that as well, which is great.
Got to stick to it all the way through. You know, I reckon the worst thing that happened at McDonald's was McCafe.
Well, that's let the game away in my next podcast. We have the owner of McDonald's for an exclusive interview about their cafe division.
Crazy. And that's the key.
I think you're right. Sticking to your guns in that sense is important, and I think with that though there's a little bit of nuance to it, that if it's not right, it's okay to change something.
Immediately.
But if you know it's right and you know it works, but you change it because of something else that you know you feel like you have to change for, it's often never going to work. It's not going to suit you.
Yep. And usually when you bring somebody into the team who's not of your culture, right? And people, you know, misery loves company.
Yes.
Right? And they'll try and manipulate your culture and your environment. Oh, it'll work better. It'll do the BS.
Yeah.
What got you where you are today, right? That's what's going to make you keep going and keep going and keep going. Stick to your guns. Even learn to say no to people.
Yeah,
work for you.
I don't think that's bad advice. I guess the counter to that, the counterbalance on that is that sometimes change is good, but you need to know that it's the right thing to do on balance with the culture. I think is the right way of maybe framing that, I guess. So if someone's doing something in an agency and they need to change, they know they need to change, but they need to balance that against the culture. You know, you don't just suddenly change it because Bob comes in and Bob says something needs to be done. You need to weigh that up against how's this going to impact the culture of the business as much as the bottom line of the business, because they are intertwined.
Totally agree, Chris.
Yeah. Well,
awesome.
I think that's pretty powerful advice to end this podcast on. I've got to have a chat with McDonald's now to make sure we're not going to get sued, but you know, we'll see. I'll let you know. But no, thanks very much for coming along, Shane.
My pleasure.
And as soon as this podcast's up, you'll have to share it with your Duda team and your Duda community. I'm sure they'll love listening to it.
We'll blast it out there for you, Chris. Don't you worry about that.
Wonderful. I mean, I'm all about the listens. You see, this is an ego trip for me.
Are you having fun? Though? Are you having fun?
Oh yeah, love it. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I get to talk to people that interest me, and that's something that I'm all about, talking to interesting people.
I love it, mate.
So thanks very much for coming along, Shane. And for those of you who are listening, of anyone of interest in the metaverse, in the last couple of days, I've released a new agency coaching mastermind session, international. So wherever you are in the world, you can join me in the metaverse in our virtual boardroom. To talk about your agency changes, successes, problems, share war stories and have a conversation. But until next time, thanks very much for coming to listen to And We Have an Office Dog. Cheers, Shane.
See you, mate.